Hello and welcome to a mini Davis weather tracking update here. It's been a while, folks. It's been since March since I've uploaded, but I'm going to get back into the scheme of things for a few reasons. So let's waste no time here and get into the forecast because we have a rather busy couple of days coming up here. So we're looking at the overview for the Storm Prediction Center page here. We do have a couple severe thunderstorm watches ongoing across portions of Iowa and the UP of Michigan and into Wisconsin. Those areas are currently seeing some minor squall lines developing, it appears. Some multicellular like convection. This one in Iowa has been producing pretty significant reports and even a tornado report earlier. So, this one in Iowa has been producing pretty consistent damaging winds. So, I expect that to continue downstream here into maybe some portions of northwestern Illinois here over the next couple of hours. But nonetheless, this should sustain itself at least through the Davenport region as it's just now passing Cedar Rapids and Dubuque. And let's get into the forecast for the next couple of days, because today is not only one of the days we're going to have to watch, we're going to have to watch a few days, especially towards the end of the weekend and to the early half of next week. We're going to be watching some possibly a ring of fire pattern develop here. We'll explain that in just a sec here. But let's get to today. First of all, we have a 2% tornado risk across Iowa. That is already kind of materialized up here as we saw just a second ago. Our 15% wind corridor is up there. There's also a conditional SIG 1 wind threat over here in northern Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, where there is potential for maybe a scattered, strong to potentially significant damaging wind gusts in that corridor as well. Our strong hail could be into Iowa, as some of the lapse rates there are pretty decent over the area right now. As a kind of a plume of lapse rates has spread over the area. Like I said, we'll take a look at that in a sec. So that's overall for today. Most of this slight risk has already happened, though. We might see maybe some convection along the outflow boundary here in central Iowa, but we'll have to see about that in just a second here. Taking a look at our day 2 outlook, we have a marginal risk into effect for kind of the same areas as we're today. There's another marginal risk up here into portions of the mid-Atlantic region as well. No tornado risk and just a 5% wind threat across most of the area. A minor hail risk also exists where once again, that plume of decent lapse rates exists over the Great Plains. So that area is currently expected to see severe weather kind of for the next few days as this ridge kind of builds up over the central United States here. As we head into day 3, we're going to be watching for more of that ring of fire pattern here as we have a look here. Kind of coincides along on that northwestern periphery of that ridge there. That's where we like to see our storm riders here, especially across that area around this time of year. So very common, but ring of fire kind of pattern setting up here is going to be a pretty decent high pressure here setting up across portions of New Mexico into near Colorado there. This could lead to potentially some favorable corridors for maybe an MCS or two. Looking rather uncertain for Sunday. There's probably going to be a cap in place, especially across portions of that eastern extent. So we're not really sure yet about Sunday, but there could definitely be some severe weather across anywhere in this kind of Midwest corridor here. I would expect an expansion of that marginal risk and maybe the inclusion of a slight risk here. I would expect an expansion out here with recent model guidance and maybe a slight risk in this corridor if confidence does increase, as there could be maybe a few clusters of storms that kind of develop here. But of course, the main day we're actually going to be watching here is actually into our day 4 through 8 outlook, and it's going to be on Monday here. Once it loads here, we're going to get towards the Monday time frame. There is a 15%, that's a slight risk, already in effect here. So here it is. This is going to be for portions of the Great Lakes. These areas, once again, getting hammered this summer. We've been seeing quite a few risks around here, but this one's going to be portions for southern lower Michigan here, into portions of Illinois there, as well as Indiana and Ohio. So those areas are going to be under effect for this day 4 threat. This is going to be encompassing much of the southern Great Lakes, including southern portions of Lake Erie and southern portions of Lake Michigan there. So once again, this area could be a favorable hotspot for potentially some possible squall line and MCS development, actually. This is going to be one of the more favorable days. There's more certainty as to if storms will happen. It just depends on when. So this area may shift over the coming days, but it's just a general idea that we have right now of where there could be some severe weather, especially as we get towards the later half of the day. As for Tuesday, there's not a threat at the moment, but here, once it loads there we go. there's not a threat at the moment, but I would expect maybe an inclusion of a marginal or maybe even a slight risk for that area further south as this ring of fire pattern kind of shifts down to the south. That trough will kind of dig in from Canada here across portions of the northeast. So we could see some cooler temps across portions of the northeast into early next week. Um, but yeah, I'd expect that storm track to kind of remain roughly around the same area, maybe shunted a little further to the south, however, on Tuesday. And especially as we get towards Wednesday as well. Wednesday, day 6. Nothing yet, but I would expect maybe some more severe weather across portions of that southern, kind of into the lower Ohio Valley, that kind of area, maybe even stretching a little bit into the southeast as that risk or as that trough continues to push further south. After this, things get a little more uncertain whether this ridge tries to like break down completely and we get like maybe a ridging pattern in the east or a ridging pattern in the rest. Not really sure yet. Overall consensus is that at least at the start, we're going to have to be watching portions of the Midwest, maybe into the Mid-Atlantic and lower Ohio Valley. Early next week for some potential severe weather events. Mostly will be probably main threats will be damaging wind with these, though there is going to be a decent plume of those mid-level lapse rates, like I was saying. So this could also take on more of a cellular mode as well, maybe multicellular clusters, potential of maybe some large hail as well, and an isolated tornado in these areas too. So kind of all things are on the table here. We'll definitely be sure to let you know once we get closer to the event on Monday here. But Monday, Tuesday, going to be days to watch. Also Sunday, just more uncertainties on Sunday than on Monday and Tuesday. So let's get right into the models here, starting with today, how today's progression is going to continue across portions of Iowa. So let's take the 18Z run. As you can see, this thing kind of diminishes here. This little, it looks like an MCV kind of that kind of formed off of it here. But this thing kind of is going to diminish over the next coming hours, and that's kind of, yeah, your risk for Iowa. So the risk there is already kind of mainly gone away, I'd say. I'd say we're past the peak of the risk for sure. There is going to be, like we said, some more development up here in the UP of Michigan and also Wisconsin. Some scattered development here in the Midwest and Ohio Valley as well. And let's look back here towards the Oklahoma, New Mexico area to see what that risk there was all about. It appears that maybe this was for potentially a cluster over here. Not exactly sure why they have that SIG corridor. It could be for some pop-ups here. But yeah, decent. There's some supercell composite across the area, decent cape as well, about 1 to 2,000, maybe even some spots approaching 3,000 there, areas further east. But that should be peaking around now, and yeah, the main corridor I'd say is to watch is for eastern Oklahoma at this point. I'd say this area is probably capped. I think that might be the issue. Yeah, definitely a capping inversion here across portions of New Mexico, Texas, and western Oklahoma. So maybe that's why they had it as conditional, but environment is definitely supportive of a few strong wind gusts for sure. So let's go into the future here and take a look back at the Midwest for portions of tomorrow now. Let's see how this progression, the NAM is going to handle this progression here. So this is the NAM 3K model, the high resolution NAM. It looks like tomorrow's threat is a rather conditional one at that. We see some development here, maybe in Nebraska heading into Kansas there, maybe some scattered development off of it, off the outflow boundary from that. Some scattered development here across portions of the lower Great Lakes as well. That's mainly going to be non-severe, though. In nature, not much threat on that. Maybe a marginal risk could be included for portions of eastern Ohio. Wouldn't be surprised to see that. Our threat more starts to focus when we get into Sunday here. And as you can see, a little less concerned on Sunday, though. This model does have a pretty significant squall line here. MCS going from southern Iowa all the way down here into Missouri. Pretty decent bowing on that. Definitely something we're going to have to watch. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see a slight risk upgrade. Maybe something on the northern side there heading towards Lake Michigan and maybe into Michigan as it gets towards the morning hours as well. So I certainly would not be surprised to see some sort of potential squall line on Sunday, to be honest. Just a lot of questions still to be answered once we get toward there. It depends how tomorrow trends as well, if we get some formation tomorrow. But the environment is definitely supportive on Sunday of potentially significant damaging wind event. Just the confidence isn't there at the moment. And that is why they're keeping it at a marginal risk. Though I would not be surprised with a slight risk upgrade for that area. Let's head towards the Monday time frame now. So the lower resolution NAM handles this a little differently. Keeps that cap in place. It has some early morning convection across portions of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and even into Michigan there. But it keeps kind of this outflow boundary riding here across portions of the lower Great Lakes, and actually fires convection here over Michigan. Um, and then that keeps a hold on things from Monday. So this kind of these events are going to kind of depend on each other. Monday's threat is going to depend on how Sunday's evolution ends up playing out here. So definitely, yeah, highly supportive environment though for storms on Monday across most of the lower Great Lakes here. Anywhere from like Southwest Ontario all the way to Northeast Kansas here is a pretty decent environment here for severe weather. So any kind of squall line or multicellular cluster that tries to form could easily tap into this environment. It's just the question is, can it break the cap, or if there is some sort of stable air mass in place, like how we saw for portions of Michigan here. They were under enhanced risk last week, or 2 weeks ago, sorry. But kind of a layer of stable air formed due to the nature of the shortwave trough riding through and kind of kept a lid on things. So we'll definitely have to watch this kind of thing over the next couple of days here, but it's going to be very interesting to watch. And yeah, so let's take a look at how the GFS handles this next. The GFS is a little bit of a different situation here. It's got a pretty decent environment here across portions of Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota here on Sunday, with some development here, as you can see, forming across the area. Then Monday shifts towards that, once again, southern Lake Michigan area, into portions of Michigan, Lake Erie, and even heading into the Iowa area. Definitely maximized here across this area, though, near Indiana, Michigan, and also Illinois. Let's take a look at the simulated reflectivity, and this thing does have some storms firing around those areas. So this thing is also like not really great at handling convection. So we could definitely see a decent line of storms in this area. I wouldn't be surprised. Same thing on Sunday for this area. I would not be surprised to see a line of storms. However, details will be refined in the coming days. We'll definitely have more forecasts for you over the weekend and especially on Monday. As for the Cape in this area, it's going to be very high, actually, potentially over 3,000 in some spots here. Wouldn't be surprised if we even cracked 4,000 or 5,000 here, according to this model. This model has peaking around 5,500 here. Portions of central and northern Illinois here, and even into Indiana. It's kind of scraping into Michigan there as well. So those areas are going to be the areas to watch. Actually gets pretty decently up here into the portions of the Michigan region. So this area kind of here is going to be our main area to watch here on Monday. This area here, kind of where the SBC outlined. I'd definitely be more focused on that western corridor more than the eastern at the moment, but things can change. So we're going to have to watch this area very carefully here. Let's kind of play this through the longer range here. Let's extend this to the continental U.S., and let's have a look at how this thing plays out, that trough that I was talking about. This trough digging in from Canada. So there's that shortwave here that spawns the stuff on Monday and even into Tuesday here across the area. Definitely a stronger signal on Tuesday there for that shortwave. It digs further south, and we get maybe a reformation of that ridge. It kind of digs south, and we get some re-enhancement of that ridge. This is heading into next weekend, though, so this is where things get really uncertain, but we kind of could see a very similar pattern trend kind of continuing here on, wow, decent trough there for August. Wow. I imagine, I imagine that would be a pretty significant event if that happened, but this is rather far out, but kind of the same area, to be honest, is going to be kind of getting hammered over the next few weeks. So Midwest into the Great Lakes, this area here is going to be the area to watch for severe weather across portions of the next few weeks in heading into mid-August here. So that's going to be the area to watch, and we'll have more videos forecasting anything that comes your way. So that is going to wrap it up for this forecast video from Davis Weather Tracking. Thank you all for watching. It's been a pleasure to be back, and we will be back again probably tomorrow or on Sunday for another forecast update. See you then, guys.